What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have my special guest, Amish country Mets fan, joining me today. How you doing, my guy?
Pretty good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, definitely. Before we get into anything, obviously we're going to be updating, the state of the New York Mets going on right now. We got a lot to talk about today, but just wanted to shout you out. I know you got your Twitter page going. Y'all make sure you go down there, follow Amish Country Met on Twitter. Obviously, like I said, we've been interacting. We're probably going to do some more collabs here soon. So we got some more stuff in the works here. I'm definitely excited about that. Make sure you go follow the WTS Pod on Twitter. You can find us at the WTS Pod. I know for myself, I got a Spotify as well. So make sure you go ahead and link over to Spotify in the description as well. But yeah, I mean, let's get right into it, man. We're here to recap the Mets. Obviously, they're coming off the homestand. We're here to recap the series they just had with the Nationals. Obviously, a lot to talk about with that National series. Obviously, we dropped 2 of 3 to the Washington Nationals. Uh, I know Mets Twitter. You're high in on Mets Twitter right now. They're not too happy over there. What are your initial thoughts about the whole situation regarding Mets Twitter?
I I probably shouldn't say all my thoughts on Mets Twitter, but no, I love most of the people out there. It's just some people just take it too overboard. Like the second we get behind in a game, they just start like complaining about everybody and they start dissing individual players, and it's just it gets old, man. It's the constant whining and complaining. It's like we haven't won anything since '86. I don't know how Mets fans became so entitled.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, especially with Steve Cohen coming on board now, I think that they have these false expectations that the Mets are going to be World Series contenders, which they are, right? They're already World Series contenders, but in terms of winning a World Series, I'm not sure if they think that's going to happen overnight or, it's definitely not an expedited process. So I definitely agree with that sentiment that Mets Twitter needs to relax a little bit. But the thing is like New York sports fans are always like that across the board. You got
Yeah,
Knicks fans, you got that portion of Knicks Twitter. I know that you're also on Knicks Twitter as well, kind of peeping what's going on over there. They're silent for the minute right now because obviously we are in the second round. So shout out them. Shout out all of New York sports, by the way. Shout out all of New York sports. We had the draft going last night. Obviously, I had that live draft, but yeah, this national series. Obviously, last night I was more in tune to the live draft that I was doing on my channel, but you were fully in tune to the game yesterday. Let's hear some of your thoughts and give us a little bit of a recap. We can definitely revisit the first few games as well during the series. Obviously, the Mets broke a 4-game skid, I think it was last night, correct?
yeah. 4 game skid. They finally won. They Lucchese looked good, and I mean, he was a little shaky in the first inning, but he got out of it. Didn't give up too many runs. The offense finally got clicking. Lindor got the 2 doubles, I believe, 3 RBIs. Alonso finally got a hit. He was like 0 for 18 before he got a hit. McNeil keeps hitting. Marte was big. Marte got a hit. Stole a big base. Like the offense got good. The biggest issue I had was the top of the eighth inning. We were up. Well, I think we were up 4, and Tommy Hunter had come in the inning prior and pitched, and for some reason Buck left him in for the top of the eighth, and then he proceeded to hit 2 batters, and then Lindor made an error that he definitely should have made the play. That loaded the bases, and then um, the Nats hit a home run. Actually, it might have been we were up 3 at the time because put the Nats in the lead by 1,
Yeah, because they
and
had that
so
sac fly, I'm pretty sure, right?
yeah, and Mets Twitter went nuts. Um, the Lindor haters quickly forgot all he had done good prior and started harping on him about the air and this, that, and the other. And then like almost as quickly as they were bitching and moaning, the Mets came back in the following inning and scored 2 runs to take the lead. And Robertson came in the ninth and shut it down, which he's been amazing. Um, so
Phenomenal.
yeah, I mean, other than that eighth inning, the game was actually pretty calm. But the eighth inning things got a little crazy.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I'm glad I stayed off of Mets Twitter last night, especially for that middle part of the game where CJ Abrams hit the grand slam. I got my notifications, had my notifications on side by side, so I was sort of like paying attention. Obviously, Brett Beatty, shout out Brett Beatty, hit a home
Yeah,
run.
Beatty went three
First
for
at City
three.
Field. Three
Yeah.
for three, first at City Field. That guy has caught some unlucky breaks, but I'm so happy that they're really finally starting to sort of commit to him in that lineup. Obviously, he's the future at third base. And even the times that he gets out, he just puts tremendous swings on the ball. I like his discipline at the plate. I like his patience. So I'm really happy that he got the call up and he's sort of becoming more involved with the team in that aspect. Like you said, Lindor, I saw got a huge game. A couple guys had, two base hits on the day, right? You got Nimmo, two base hits. Lindor had two base hits. Beatty had three, like you just mentioned. And I think a guy
Mhm.
who's really starting to come around is Daniel Vogelbach, right? He's been showing some consistency here lately. So that's going to be huge to get some production out of both the third base slot now that Beatty's in there, and then if Daniel Vogelbach can get going at the DH spot, obviously was sort of teetering back and forth last year, a little bit of inconsistent play. I think he had a decent OPS last year, but I'm feeling like he's really starting to come into his own. But the two guys that I think really set the tone for the lineup are Marte and Lindor, and they really need to get going. And I think hopefully yesterday starts that trend.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, Vogelbach, I think I read a stat. He's had one of the highest OPS since coming over to the Mets in all of baseball. I mean, obviously he doesn't play every day. He's a platoon guy, but yeah, he gets a lot of. To me, he gets a lot of unwarranted hate. Um, yes, I'd love for him to hit for more power. He's only hit one home run this year, but
Yep.
he's not bad as that left-handed part of that platoon. It's just we don't. I mean, fans been okay too, but we I think fans and even I like a consistent guy that can just produce every day from the DH spot, and it just seems
Yeah.
like it's been very hit or miss for us for the last year and a couple months.
I agree, and especially because you got to play the matchups now. Obviously, if you're committing to a platoon type player or a platoon type role at the DH spot, you'll have your lefty righty going up against the pitching matchups. Vogelbach is holding his own, like you said. He's had one of the highest OPSs since coming to the Mets. But Tommy Pham is on the other side of that equation, and a lot of fans, Mets Twitter obviously wasn't happy with the Tommy Pham signing. He was one of our only offensive additions in terms of free agency this past year. I certainly wasn't thrilled with him being the only key piece in the offense and free agency. But I think our lineup is days and light years ahead of what the lineup was last year, just with the kids being called up and Alvarez and Beatty. And I think that they have plugged in huge needs for this team. Obviously, we could talk about Tomas Nido all day behind the plate and offensively. I know your stance on that. We've definitely discussed that before. So I want to see Alvarez also being integrated a little bit more, just like Beatty starting to be integrated. So um, obviously, we had a great come from behind win. The bullpen was a little bit shaky this series, which is not a knock on their performance at all this season. They've been holding it down for the starting pitching, obviously picking up some slack for the starting pitching. They looked a little rough this series. I think obviously Rayleigh gave up the grand slam. Tommy Hunter didn't help him at all before Rayleigh came in to kind of clean up his mess. So Yacobonis struggled. I think it was the game before. It was either the game before or the first game of the series, maybe the first game of the series. But that first game, I want to just highlight I want to just give props, and I don't want to kind of get into it, but Josiah Gray pitched the game of his life, and the Mets bats just couldn't do anything against Josiah Gray. Um,
Hmm.
I know, like you mentioned, obviously you had that stat where Josiah Gray had a very high ERA against the Mets last season, and I
Yeah.
live in Nationals territory, man. You know this, so I'm always tuning into the Nationals, and I'm always watching Josiah Gray pitch. It just so happened that he wanted to pitch a career game the night that you mentioned his stat against the Mets. So that was funny to me.
Yeah, I kind of regret saying that, but I mean, it was a fact. It's not like I was making it up. Like he pitched
No, you
against us
weren't.
and he sucked last year. So, but of course, he goes out there and pitches the best game of his career. So what can you do? I mean, let's not forget Josiah Gray and Mackenzie Gore both shut us down, but they're both very highly regarded prospects. that came over in trades. So like, not it's not like these guys are scrubs. These guys are
No.
kids that haven't reached their full potential yet, but they're
Yeah.
good. They're
No,
good
not at
arms.
all. No, not at all. I mean, they both came over. They were both the key pieces in some huge deals. Obviously, Gray coming over in that Trey Turner Scherzer deal to the Dodgers, and then Mackenzie Gore coming over in the Juan Soto Josh Bell trade to the Padres. So, and that kind of segues me into our next sort of like discussion here. Obviously, this is the MLB. Anybody can beat anybody on any given day, right? I heard someone talking
Hmm.
about that in the Twitter Spaces the other night, and it's, very true. And being a fan of baseball and being so reactionary after every game, especially over the course of 162, is a recipe to be angry on a lot of nights, right? So it's not something where we can expect the Mets to come out and go 162 and 0 or anything near that. Obviously, a handful of teams have won 110 games in MLB history. So the percentage rates of failure across the board, not only wins and losses, but just like in batting, batting averages, etc. It's a game of failure. So I think that the fans really need to start realizing that. And obviously, when you get into a discussion about, I try not to get any back and forth on Twitter. I know you do this, you try not to do the same, but
Yeah, I
you can
try. I
really,
failed yesterday.
yeah, yeah. I know we were kind of discussing that. You failed a little bit, but sometimes they just rope you in. Sometimes you got to entertain it every once in a while. But
Mhm.
um, yeah, baseball's a game of failure, man. So we can't expect perfection. Losing streaks do happen. The opponent is the opponent. Obviously, the Mets shouldn't, on paper, lose to teams like the Nationals, but
Yeah,
they're pros too over there on the other side. So anything can happen. So next topic that I want to talk about is Kodai Senga. Obviously, he started in game two. Kodai Senga is, I think, has been one of our brighter spots, which is, you know, saying something, I guess, about the starting rotation. He's had some command issues, obviously, but the thing that I like about Kodai Senga is even when he loses command a little bit, obviously with his walks, and he's been susceptible to the long ball so far. He keeps the Mets in games, right?
yeah,
Obviously his pitch counts have been high. He's only been able to complete, go through 5 innings, but he keeps the Mets around in ball games. Obviously, the middle game of the series, Kodai Senga started. He he pitched, I think he went 5 again, and then he only gave up 2 earned runs. And then when he left the game, the Mets were only down 2-1. So he keeps
mhm.
this lineup in games. What has your impression been about on Kodai Senga so far? Obviously, transferring over from the Japanese league.
I like certain things that I see. Obviously, and this has been a rotation wide problem. He is not giving us any length. Walking a lot of guys. Just if he can get the walks down, we'd be solid. But when he's at like 100 pitches through 5 innings, that's a problem.
Yeah, yeah,
He's obviously people have trouble seeing his stuff. Gets been getting like 6, 7 strikeouts a game in just 5 innings. So I mean, I like what I see. Obviously, it's going to be a learning curve for him. He's coming from a different league. He's dealing with a new ball. He's just all kind of language barriers, all these things. Like it's gonna take time. Even the weather. I think in Japan, don't they play all their games in domes?
yeah.
Um,
Most of those games that I've seen are in domes. So
yeah, so dealing with the weather is probably different for him. So I think he's just gonna continue to get better, in my opinion. Like the more he pitches, the more he gets a feel for the game. I think you're gonna see him start to get better and cut down on those walks a bit. And I I really think he's gonna be a, a top of the rotation type guy for us.
I agree. I agree. And the fact that we have the luxury, obviously, when Verlander and Scherzer come back to, kind of put him in that third slot in the rotation is definitely a luxury for the Mets. I was huge on the signing when they signed Kodai. I think everybody was when he came over and when the notification dropped that we had signed him. I know we had some competition. I think with the Padres, they were one of the teams that were the finalists for Kodai, but definitely glad that he
Mm.
chose Queens. The ghost fork is here to stay. That pitch is absolutely nasty. It starts right at the middle of the zone and then it just drops right at the hitter's feet. It's unfair when he's kind of commanding that pitch and kind of manipulating it how he wants. But moving on from the National Series, let's just close this out by talking about the Mets Braves coming up. Obviously, I know we have some weather. It's raining where I'm at right now. I know it's probably raining where you're at
Yeah.
right now as well, correct?
Yeah, I did a couple of videos earlier, and I had to do them from inside the garage because it's raining pretty good out there.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see. I checked the weather briefly for Flushing for City Field over there on my weather app. It says that the rain might start around 8 p.m. So we'll see if they can get maybe a couple innings in and sort of play it out by ear. I know that Steve Cohen wanted to sort of, if they know that the game wasn't going to be finished, maybe they just postpone it until a later date. I don't know how that's going to play out. So we'll see. But let's just look at the pitching matchups on paper. We got Freed versus Peterson, game one. Um, Freed, obviously, he's 1-0 with a .6 ERA in 15 innings pitched this year. Obviously, he's their ace. Just on
Yeah,
paper, when you're talking about Freed versus Peterson, it doesn't look pretty for the Mets. Um, but what do you think about, if they do play today, what are you expecting to see just, realistically out of the Mets today against their ace?
I'll say this about the Mets: when you expect them to do their worst, they tend to do their best.
Exactly.
It's just a weird thing about them. They like at times they play down to the competition, but when they get like tougher competition, they tend to step up. And they hit Freed decent last year. I don't think he ever like necessarily dominated them. I think they'll give him a battle if they get the game in. My biggest concern is Peterson. That Braves lineup is really good, and Peterson has shown that he's susceptible to giving up big innings, and I don't know. He scares me.
I agree. And the thing is like I talked about this in one of my Spotify episodes. I kind of gave a rundown on the state of the New York Mets. Um, McGill and Peterson, to me, they have shown promise, but we've all just been waiting for that consistency to follow through, right?
Mhm.
They've shown games where they can be lights out. McGill's velocity has gone down. Obviously, he was dealing with some injuries towards the back end of last year. All throughout last year, I should say. But Peterson is a guy who, if he has all this stuff going, he can be lights out for 5, 6 innings if he keeps his pitch count down. The thing is that the consistency just hasn't been there. So
No.
it's hard for me to trust guys like Peterson and McGill who have shown capability. But when we get over, down the stretch of 162 and say we are slotted up against the Braves in the key series for the division, I'm not too confident in those guys going up against the Braves guys, especially if they have their aces on their mound. So it's going to be something to watch out for, to look out for.
Yeah, my hope is that I mean it's months away, but if we get to that point that those guys are not a rotation, at least definitely not both of them. I
Yeah.
think at the very least we're going to get a trade for an arm at some point in the summer, and then Quintana could come back as long as Verlander and Scherzer are healthy. Our rotation should improve. Verlander actually is pitching in a rehab game right now. Last I checked, 3 innings he's pitched so far and done pretty well. I don't know if they're taking him out already or what, but that's good to see.
Is that
Hopefully
today?
we get him back
Is that
here.
today?
Yeah, it's going on right now.
Oh wow. Okay. I know they can't see, but I got my Verlander jersey on right now, kind of sporting that. So he's going to be
Nice.
huge for this rotation to relieve some pressure off the rotation, especially for Kodai, who's been kind of unfortunately needing to fill the role of sort of an ace type player, ace type rotation guy. But we'll see what happens. I'm curious about Scherzer. Scherzer is another guy who obviously statistically he's still been sound. He's gotten roughed up in a couple starts, especially this season. Last year, obviously, he didn't have a good go at it in the Brave series for the division, that crucial Brave series, and also he got roughed up against the Padres in the wild card series. So we're really going to need Scherzer, especially with the amount that he's getting paid, to sort of step up and be that leader and kind of produce on the field this year.
Yeah, I think this suspension actually could be a blessing in disguise. He was a little banged up there before that. I feel like this might have given him some more time to heal up from that. And then, Scherzer, he's a madman. Now, he's going to go out there with a chip on his shoulder, and he's probably going to want to prove that sticky stuff isn't what's helping him dominate lineups. Like, I don't know. I got a
Yeah,
feeling that this could be a good thing. We definitely need it because his really in shambles, but I think he's going to bounce back, and I think he'll be all right. I mean, it looks like he might start Monday, if depending on how all this works out with the rainouts and whatnot.
right.
If any game gets rained out, he technically can't start because he wouldn't have fulfilled his suspension. So we'll
Yeah,
see how
that
that
makes
goes.
sense. Yeah. We'll see how that lines up. But yeah, I know you mentioned the sticky stuff. Shout out to Shay and Sons podcast. Go follow their YouTube. Go watch their YouTube videos.
Yep.
Subscribe over to them. I know Keith did that sticky stuff sort of simulation with the rosin and alcohol, and he was working up a sweat to try to see if he can mimic that sort of mixture that they were doing on Sunday Night Baseball. But yeah, so obviously we just went over Freed and Peterson. If the games happen, obviously, like I said, we have rain coming all weekend. It looks like we got game two, Strider versus McGill. So it's basically their aces versus our back end guys in the first two slots of the game, which is tough. And then the third game
Yeah.
is going to be Charlie Morton versus Jose Butos. So it's not looking good on paper all across the board for the Mets in terms of the starting pitching. So
Yeah, there's nothing more that I'd love than to rough up Strider. I can't stand him. Um,
I
he's
agree.
just,
I
I don't know,
agree.
his personality. I hate the Braves to begin with, but he's just such a jerk. And that stupid mustache, just drives me nuts. So I don't
What do
know.
you, he was the one. He was the one that was insinuating the Mets were getting lucky on their
Lucky, yeah,
when
yeah,
they roughed them up at City Field last year, right?
yeah. He said we were getting lucky hits, and yeah, I don't know. He just runs his mouth a lot. I don't like him.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. The Braves have always been a pain in the Mets back ends, but it's going to be a tight division race. Obviously, we haven't been talking about the Phillies. I'm sure we're going to talk about the Phillies at some point. They had a slow
Phillies
start to their
suck.
season as well. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. On paper, they have a great team, but we'll just see how it plays out. They got some holes in that roster as well, just like the rest of the NL East. And the Dodgers are struggling as well. We're not going to talk about the Dodgers, but the Dodgers have been struggling as well. So Padres, another team that's struggling. So when you look at and when you get mad at the Mets for struggling, you got to realize that it's
There's
not just
not
the
a lot of
Mets who are
teams
struggling.
dominating.
Exactly. Minus the Pittsburgh Pirates. Shout out Pittsburgh. Shout out PNC. And I know you're heading over there at some point later this season to PNC. So
Yeah, beginning of June, the Mets will be in for a 3-game set. I go every year, so definitely will be down there for that. I love PNC Park. That place, amazing. I just love that
yeah, I
place.
still have to go. I still have to go. I've heard great things. But hey, man, I appreciate you hopping on the pod. We're gonna wrap things up here. We'll see if the games get going. This weekend with the rain coming in. I appreciate you stopping by to talk some Mets with me. Definitely, like I
For
said,
sure.
go follow Amish Country Matt on Twitter and go ahead and shout yourself out, bro. Shout out your YouTube and what you're about, and kind of give us a little outro here.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm covering up my mic so you can see my backdrop there. That's I had a guy make that for me. Um, so yeah, I'm Amish Country Mets fan. I do a lot of my videos out in the um with the farm as my backdrop, and I got pigs running around back there and all kinds of farm life, and people seem to enjoy that aspect of it. It's pretty unique. I haven't seen any other Mets fans out in, in the middle of
I
a
haven't seen it.
farm and um, breaking down the Mets and doing stuff. Sometimes I'll do like funny little skits, whatever comes to mind, man. I'm just doing it off the cuff. I'm doing my best to like grow the channel. So yeah, follow, subscribe at Amish Country Fan. Hit me up at Twitter. I'm at Amish Country Met, and I look forward to doing more of these collabs with you, Shay and Sons, James over at the Mets Way, like all these guys, man. I really like what everybody's doing, and I really like supporting each other. I actually got another thing coming out. Jared from the Mets Way interviewed me for an article that's coming out soon, so that'll be dropping. So that'll be cool. Uh, Yeah, so that's what I got going on. I appreciate you having me on.
Sounds good. Definitely. Shout out the Mets way. Go tune into them as well. Shout out James, like you said, Shay and Sons podcast. We'll all get some more collabs going. Definitely gonna have you back on to talk some more Mets with me. And I appreciate you stopping by. Go follow Amish Country Met on Twitter. Go follow his YouTube. Go subscribe to his YouTube page as well. I'm sure I'll link that in the description as well. Go follow at the WTSpod on Twitter, and then hit that subscribe button. Like I said, drop a like, drop a comment, and we got some more Mets content coming your way. Catch y'all
Yo,
later.
and you have to come on my channel as well, man.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Definitely will do whenever you want to get that going. We'll get that collab going.
All right, man. Sounds good.
All right, man. Catch you later.